Hi there, and welcome to the 2020 Midwest Regional Sustainability Summit panel entitled More Than a Donation, How Repurposing a Solar PV System Galvanized an Urban Community. In this society, as forces are dividing us, is it possible that clean energy can actually unite us? That's one question that this panel of Cincinnati leaders will aim to explore and unpack as we go through this next riveting hour. Now, we're here at New Prospect Baptist Church in Roselawn, a Cincinnati neighborhood. And just 9 months earlier, people and groups from across greater Cincinnati came together to install a repurposed solar PV system here on the campus at New Prospect in Roselawn. Needless to say, a few things have changed over the last 9 months. We were originally intended to speak in front of a large audience, standing room only perhaps, at the Cintas Center at Xavier University. But today, we're practicing somewhat of a social distancing effort with our panel, note the masks, but also doing our best to share our story, this story with you that's very special. It's a story of collaborative impact and inclusion that will hopefully change the way you think about sustainability for you and your organization. Before I introduce this distinguished panel, I want to share the story of the installed system here that was donated by the Melink Corporation in nearby Milford. It's something we could tell you, but we'd rather show you. So here's the video that highlights that story. The Melink Corporation with New Prospect Baptist Church and a lot of other groups within Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Zoo, we're all coming together to install a donated solar power system in Roselawn on the campus of New Prospect Baptist Church.
When I got the call and said, hey, there's a system available and they want to donate to New Prospect, I was overwhelmed.
We thought if we're going to repurpose this solar PV system, let's repurpose it in a way that can do the most good. I decided years ago to focus our philanthropic efforts toward those that further support our own mission, which is to help mainstream clean energy. If there's one organization in Cincinnati that does that, it's SonLight Power.
It just shows you the heart and soul and the love that people have for their community. They just need some help, a little bit of structure, a little bit of guidance, and they need people to bring those resources.
It's our communities that it's affecting, and you can see it firsthand, especially building it with the people who are going to be benefiting from it. It's really incredible.
This church is a good resource for this community. So if there's anything we can do to help it run more efficiently, let's get our community involved.
It's where you find out how other people's kids are doing, how their families are doing, and you have that daily conversation. And we want this place to be that place where people come on a daily basis to share life and to find those things that are essential to life.
It's just a really special feeling to know that SonLight Power could serve as the conduit, the connective tissue that brings this together.
What a mighty God we serve.
So let's introduce the panel. These are three gentlemen that I respect greatly, not only as leaders, but also as just great people. Our first panelist is the founder and CEO of Melink Corporation, a provider of energy efficiency and renewable energy solutions for the commercial building industry. Author of CEO Power and Light, Transcendent Leadership for a Sustainable World. Our panelist advocates for a clean energy revolution to improve our global economy, security, and environment. You can find this book on Amazon right now. Please welcome Steve Melink.
Thanks, Kevin.
Our second panelist needs no introduction anywhere in the sustainable development world here in Cincinnati. He's what I refer to as the rock star of sustainability, but by title, he is the Vice President for Facilities Planning and Sustainability at the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. His role at the zoo is diverse, including the development and execution of the zoo's master plan, supporting teams that build and maintain the zoo, and being present in the neighborhood of Avondale, working to heal old wounds. Mark is the driving force behind the zoo's sustainability movement, transforming the zoo from an organization that barely had a recycling program to becoming the greenest zoo in the world. Introducing Mark Fisher. Before we move on to our third panelist, Mark, we saw a video that commemorated Kurt Howard, who served on our project. Would you mind sharing a few?
Sure.
Kurt?
Kurt was an electrician at the Cincinnati Zoo for several years, and was integral in some of the behind the scenes wiring and getting this array up and running. And very shortly after this array was complete, Kurt died. Long, complicated autoimmune issue. And, just a sad moment for the zoo family, but his contributions out here on those hot days when we were doing that, and him smiling the whole time and just pouring his heart and soul into it on his own time on some of those days, kind of embodies the zoo, embodies the facilities team, and it felt appropriate to dedicate this in his name.
Yeah. I remember Kurt working on every aspect of the project, even driving the panels from Melink over to New Prospect.
Yes.
We'll miss him. Our third panelist has served as pastor of New Prospect Baptist Church in Roselawn for 29 years. It's a long time.
Yeah, it is.
He holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Cincinnati Bible College, and among his many leadership roles, he also serves as president and CEO of Community Economic Advancement Initiative. Please welcome Pastor Damon Lynch III.
Good to be here. Thank you.
By the way, the pastor has to be the hardest vocation or job I can think of.
I was just telling somebody that a few minutes ago. It is. It's not easy.
My name is Kevin Sasson. I serve as executive director for SonLight Power. We're a nonprofit faith-based mission that aims to tackle the problem affecting 1.4 billion people around the world, and that is energy poverty. We use faith-based compassion, love, and solar power to make a sustainable impact on communities and families and children that living without basic electricity. Electricity for refrigerating vaccines and medicines that can save lives, or pumping clean water where water is scarce. Since 2002, our mission has installed over 200 solar power projects across 19 countries, including the one outside the window here at New Prospect Baptist Church. So to start the discussion, we're going to deep dive into the story about the project itself. It's a great story with unity and clean energy at the core. Going back in time, at about this time 2 years ago, I received an email that started it all. It's an email from Steve Melink on the morning of August 28th, 2018. Now, every email from Steve is pretty cool, but this one was especially significant because it started the chain of events that led to this panel. Here's an excerpt from that email. We are planning to break ground on our HQ2 building and have an existing ground-mounted solar PV system that will need to be moved in order to make room. This system has a capacity of about 25 kilowatts and was installed around 2012. Question: would SonLight Power be interested in salvaging this system and using it for one of your local projects? It is performing very well, but I am not planning to reinstall it after construction of our HQ2 because I want to showcase those technologies that are current and possible solutions for our customers. Rather than selling or scrapping it, I would prefer to donate it to SonLight Power if there is interest. Please let me know your thoughts. My initial thought was, to borrow a line from Jerry Maguire, the movie, you had me at hello. Of course, yes. But before I get too far ahead, Steve, take us back to that decision. Why did you decide to donate it versus scrapping it or selling it? And what made you think of SonLight Power?
Well, thanks for that introduction, Kevin. For me, the emotional return of donating it was much greater than the financial return of selling it. It really that simple. And why SonLight Power? I've known you for about 10 years and have always admired how SonLight Power has brought solar power to underserved communities. And I thought if there's anybody who can repurpose this still very useful array, it would be Kevin. So it's as simple as that.
Thanks. Well, after reading your email, my first thought was, wow, Steve Melink just donated a solar power system to SonLight Power. Second thought was, wow, what are we going to do with it? Because where we go, typically we're working in places off the grid where some of the technology and equipment that's in that system would not be applicable. Plus the shipping cost might be cost prohibitive for some of those projects. So I picked up the phone and called my good friend Mark Fisher, who, full disclosure, it's a board leader on the SonLight Power board. And I know that Mark is always very aware of these types of things. So Mark, when I called you or emailed you and informed you about this donation that Steve made, you were pretty quick to know that where this system would land. What went into that decision?
Yeah, it was a no-brainer. One of the things that I've been blessed to be a part of over the last decade is serving with like-minded individuals all across the city in underserved communities, whether it be Evanston, Lower Price Hill, Avondale, just go down the list. And one of the neat things about that is getting to know people and understanding where maybe folks need some help or have some dreams that have gone unfulfilled. And I was lucky enough to be involved through the Res Community Fund and Charlie Frank's team and P&G and the zoo a year ago at New Prospect Baptist Church, which is essentially the community center for Roselawn, because Roselawn doesn't have a formal community center. And we did a really neat project here. It was a big old deal. Did lots of improvements all across the board. But one of the moments within that was hearing Reverend Lynch's master plan, his dream, big dream for the whole facility. And I was struck by the sustainability mission. I mean, I'm talking from chickens to growing your own food to solar panels. It was all about resiliency and being able to take care of yourself. And that's kind of my sweet spot too. So it sounded great. So I knew from day one that solar panels was a big goal here, and chickens. Well, we were able to take care of the chickens through in a really nice chicken coop through the red spread, but solar panels, they're expensive. They're $30,000-$40,000 for an array that size. And so it's out of reach for so many, but it was always in the back of my mind. So as soon as Kevin called me, it was like, I know who might like that. And that's how we made the connection.
Yeah. So then we connected with Pastor Lynch. And Pastor Lynch, that was part of your master plan.
Right.
What was going through your mind when you heard about that?
As I said on the video, I was overwhelmed. So let me also right now just thank Steve and Mark and yourself and the team. Because right now we're looking out at the solar panels, and to me it's just a beautiful array. I love just looking out there. Our church members love it. And it was part of the master plan. I mean, I have some master plans around here somewhere, and solar it's on the drawing. Yeah. And we have reached out before to try to make it happen, but this is just how God works. And so I also want to thank God because he brings people together who have like minds and like missions, and we got it done. It was an exciting project.
Yeah. Before we dive into the project itself, tell us a bit more about New Prospect's role in the local community. What are the challenges you face and how the church confronts that?
Well, I've been pastoring the church for 30 years now. First 23 of those years was in Over the Rhine on the corner of Finley and Elm, right by the Finley Market. And we had outgrown the space, no parking. We were a metropolitan church. People drove from Erlanger, Kentucky to Dayton to get here. So we had to move, which was hard. That was a hard decision to make because I loved OTR, Over the Rhine. But we found these 22 acres in Roselawn. This used to be the old Jewish Community Center when I was a kid. And it was vacant for 4 years at that time that we found this 22 acres. We're sitting now in a 90,000 square foot building in which the copper thieves took all the copper. The kids broke all the windows, all the roofs leaked. So I'm bringing a congregation from Over the Rhine and a church that is paid for to look at this, and they think I'm nuts. They're like, are you crazy? I mean, it was just a mess. But I fell in love with it. And we finally moved up here on an Easter Sunday morning. A lot of work. I don't think there's been a day in 7 years where there hasn't been a hammer ringing on this property because it takes everything. And of course, in a 90,000 square foot building, energy costs. Yeah. Energy costs probably, it was one of our greatest costs. It eats us alive. So we changed all the fluorescent bulbs to LEDs. I think it was over 4,000 bulbs that we changed. And the next thing we really were yearning for was solar energy. And it's just, again, it's just you pray and God answers prayers. So we're a growing congregation. As Mark said, we do food production, we raise hens, we raise farm fresh eggs. We have a 4-acre campsite. I mean, it's just a beautiful place.
Yeah.
So we're proud of it.
So New Prospect strives to be the village well. How does the solar power system complement that mission of being the village well?
Well, I think on our next segment, we're going to dig in deeper about how this one solar array can really change a community. But being the village well, and I'm sure you know and others, those of us who have traveled outside of the country and been places where a well is essential. I remember one day I was in Ethiopia, and where we were staying was up on a high hill, and I watched early in the morning, just mainly women, walking to the well. That's where they get their water. That's where they were washing their clothes. So the village well is a place where life meets on a daily basis, depending on where you live. In the scriptures, Moses met his wife at a well. Isaac's wife was found at a well. Jesus met a woman at a well. So things happen at the well. So we wanted our church to be that village well, where people in Roselawn or Bond Hill can come to have meetings, to get food, recreation. As Mark said, Cincinnati is known for its recreation centers, and almost every neighborhood has one except Roselawn, because this was it. So we had to repurpose the gym. We have 20,000 square feet of building we haven't even touched yet. It has an indoor swimming pool, whirlpools, hot tubs, and saunas. We haven't even gotten there yet, but eventually we'll get there, because this is where the community has to come for life.
One of the highlights of this project was watching so many groups come together and disassemble and then reassemble the system here at New Prospect. Melink employees, your staff at the zoo, New Prospect congregation members, just to name a few. There were other parties involved. I'll name a few. B&J Electric, Creek Busters, the Reds Community Fund, Sustainability Cooperative, RBI Solar, all came together right here on the campus of New Prospect Baptist Church. Steve, I'll start with you on this question. It's part of the Melink culture to walk the talk. What does it mean to you to see Melink employees, like we saw in the video, pitching in on this?
Well, it's good to see Catherine on that video. We're lucky to have her, and she's representative of the type of people that we try to bring to Melink. And I like to think that our culture is not top down; it's bottoms up, and I learn from them as much as they learn from me. And it makes me proud that we had people like Catherine being involved. But I also have to say that I'm humbled being here amongst Mark Fisher and Pastor Lynch and Kevin with all the support that you brought it, because really at the end of the day, we provided the cake mix in a box kind of a thing, but somebody had to put the love into making that mix into something beautiful and useful, and all the labor that went into it was really the big part of this project. So, I'm again humbled just by all the support and help that you guys brought to bear. So,
well, Mark, your team was very active on this project, and I'm also thinking of the network that you connected with to bring involved, like B&J Electric, for example. What does that tell you about the culture at the zoo that you've helped build?
Well, one of the things I have seen, so I've been at the zoo for 14 years now, and one of the things that is very important to me is that we always provide meaningful, impactful opportunities to serve for our staff, typically on zoo time. And a lot of people look at that, whether it be other zoos, others in the nonprofit world, like, I can't believe you're allowed to do that, or can't believe you do that. Is that even your role, your space? I'll say our facilities team is as good as it gets anywhere in the world. I put them against anybody. They work harder than most. They have a positive attitude, and they just give. One of the reasons they give our zoo more is because of projects like this. So when my team can sit back every year and reminisce about their year, and they think about the impact that they had, they just go down the list. So while we might take 2, 3, 4% of our time and get outside the zoo, whether it be again into Avondale or into Roselawn, I'm getting that back twice. So I found that if you don't provide, and this is for everybody listening to this, corporate, nonprofit, whatever, if you're not providing meaningful service opportunities, authentic service opportunities, you're missing a huge chance to invigorate your staff. And then that also extends to our subcontractors and our vendors, right? If you want to work at our zoo on our construction projects, you're going to sweat in our neighborhood. You just are. And they know that, right? So that's part of the gig. Like, hey, we have a lot of projects coming up. You know, we're going to go in this together. And oh, by the way, I need your help over here and over here and over there. And they're happy to do it. B&J is a good example. They had a fair amount of time in this thing. They're like, we got it, right? And that's because their staff want to do it. So that authentic service opportunities is one of the big things that I'm always looking at, and this project was a perfect example. Putting together the cake mix, all that work, the steel and the concrete, and that's what we're good at. That's what my team does. So for them to take their talents and kind of get out of the humdrum of the day-to-day and come over here and do something like that, stick back, take a picture and put it on Facebook and share it with their kids and their wife, you can't put a number on that. It's worth twice what I'm putting into it.
It was awesome to see. And Pastor Lynch, from your perspective, your congregation coming together, chipping in, all these other groups coming in, showing some love on Roselawn. And
Well, like Mark said, authentic service projects, getting people to do something that is just meaningful and impactful and that will outlive them. And that's what we teach here as a pastor of a church. So our members, you saw them on the video, they were out there. Interesting enough, it was probably more women that I had out there than men.
A lot more.
Yeah. Because the church is made up of a whole lot of women, but I mean, they showed up. I mean, they lifted, they drilled. And even when we did the Reds Community Fund project that Mark was a part of, our church was here. We had hundreds of volunteers. And actually, I think we paid $150,000, which was unheard of for people who normally just get something for free. Because we believe in mutually beneficial relationships. So it doesn't just benefit us. We want to be a benefit to somebody else as well. So our church is excited because we can't wait till COVID is over to travel with you to Honduras or Panama or somewhere and help somebody else.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's go. So what impact, I know it's been hard with the pandemic, but what impact have you seen already from the system there?
But no, our kids love it. The kids are downstairs now. We have a science, technology, engineering, arts, agriculture, and math camp. And part of taking care of the panels is part of what they do. So, and the community loves it. There's a large community meeting here tonight, and they'll be in this space, and they're going to look out there and be impressed. And it helps share the message about sustainable and clean energy.
Yeah. One of the volunteers that I had a chance to talk with from New Prospect mentioned it's tough for young men here in this community as far as opportunities and looking for sustainable jobs. How do you envision this system could be used to help maybe apprentice young men in green jobs?
Well, one of the reasons that I really wanted this was because I think clean energy is a sector that in the African American community and low income communities is invisible. And my goal is that every home, as long as the sun's shining, and it will continue until God says otherwise, every home ought to have solar panels. I mean, that's like a dream of mine. So in African American communities and lower income communities, you don't see solar panels. You don't see because we have people come here almost every day for help, and it's one or two things: it's rent or Duke. It's the energy bill. I mean, so we're giving out money every single day to help somebody stay in their home or help them pay their gas and electric bill. And I mean, God has a solution for that. And if we can figure out a way to do a low income policy on solar, as like California has and some other states have, then maybe we can alleviate and help lift some people out of poverty. I mean, we all know, those who live here, Cincinnati has one of the highest poverty rates in the country. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I've lived here my entire life. I think we're like number 5 on childhood poverty. And we have, major Fortune 500 companies here and people of Goodwill, and we're, strong philanthropy, but we're still mired in poverty. So I think that energy is a sector that can provide training and jobs, sustainable work, and help, lower the poverty rate in our city.
I'll add on to that. You'd mentioned it, but when I was out, we were kind of finishing up that day. There was one of your ladies here, Micah, I think, was there with I don't know if it was her grandson or just a neighborhood kid. And her comment to me was, it was all done, and she was smiling, and she was like, we don't see things like this in our neighborhood. So there's a symbolic value of this, that, hey, this isn't just something for the white people wherever else, or people that have a lot of money. It's like, these are people investing in our neighborhood too. And that's powerful, I think. And yes, there's a financial part in all this, but just trying to break down some of those real barriers there are between technologies like this, especially in the United States. And then for, I don't know how many tens of thousands of people that will see this every year now here. Like, oh, that's really sweet. Maybe we can do that.
Okay. Well, they're going to see the video now.
Right.
I mean, the technology gap is huge. I mean, I don't know if kids are, going back to school, public school. I think there's 36,000 kids, and they're going to be, I guess, 2 days on, 3 days off or something. Well, when COVID hit in March, and my daughter as well, I have a 9-year-old daughter, we were home. I mean, schools just closed like the next day, and you had to be ready for it. But, we were blessed to have all the technology she needed, but there were thousands of kids who didn't. I mean, they didn't have the laptops or the internet access. And for them, in March, school was over. There was no more learning. And hopefully the school system's now trying to figure that out for what they're going to do in August.
Yeah. Well, we're from different parts of the city, but I think this project will align well with each of our missions. I'll start with Steve on this one. One of the missions at Melink is to mainstream clean energy. How did the donation and the project itself demonstrate that?
This project is, an extension of what we're trying to do. I mean, it doesn't have to be just for the large corporations or for the upper middle income, sector out there, that every part of our community can enjoy the benefits of solar power. Personally, I'm really committed to the cause of addressing climate change, and I believe it's an existential threat to our planet and all life that is supported by it. And the more we can get it out there, as Pastor Lynch said, on every home. I mean, I share that vision that every home should have solar on it. We don't need to have central power plants feeding power 50 miles away. We should be aspiring towards something more resilient and more energy independent by making every building and home solar independent. And so, that's what I've dedicated my career to addressing.
Yeah. What would you say to other business leaders, business owners, about the value of this donation and the community service involved with your organization? How could that be replicated?
Well, I would say to other business leaders that nothing is more important than your brand. If you're in this social media, social conscious world that we live in today, everything is based on, how you're perceived in the world. And you may perceive some people as not being your customer per se, but they're a stakeholder somehow. And I take a larger view of the world that everybody's a stakeholder to my business and vice versa. So invest in your brand. What are the best ways to invest in your brand? Clean energy is one of them. What are the big problems out there in the world that need to be solved? Climate change, poverty, of course, disease and war and all these other big causes out there. But I think the lack of clean energy out there, and that we need to do what we can to move from a fossil fuel dependent economy to one that is solely powered by clean energy.
Yeah. Similar question for you, Pastor Lynch. What would you tell leaders of other churches about the value of collaboration and this kind of impact in the church community? Because we know that churches can be kind of adhering to their borders and let people in, but you've done a great job being inclusive.
Yes, you want to be inclusive. You want to be helpful so others can have what we have here. You don't want people to get jealous, because sometimes that happens. It's like, oh, they gave it to Damon again. It's like, so, but Damon wants to spread it. If I could do this for every church. Churches are actually suffering right now. Churches were in a pandemic before the pandemic. They were losing membership. And a lot of churches like this one have these huge buildings where energy cost is draining them. I mean, in Avondale, where you are, those churches on Reading Road, these used to be synagogues and Episcopal churches that are now Black Baptist churches. I mean, the membership is not there to sustain it, but the building still cries. The building is like that monster on, what was that, Rocky Horror Picture Show? Feed Me? I mean, the building still cries out, feed me.
The beast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that beast. And so that's why, I share with Steve, I would love to see clean energy just made available for those institutions. And that's one of my goals.
Mark, going to you now, with your work on the Roselawn renovation and other projects near Avondale and Gabriel's Place, what would you tell leaders of other organizations about the impact these projects have, not only on those impacted, but also on the organizations serving?
Well, I think brand is a big piece of it. I mean, the zoo is a blue chip brand in this town. There's a lot of reasons for that. But part of it is some of the work we do in the neighborhoods. It absolutely is. It's the amount of positive feedback we get it's a good example of doing well by doing good. It comes back to you. It just does, 100 different ways. I would say too, again, the employee morale, employee productivity, authentic opportunity to serve, that is so powerful, and almost nobody does it. It's like, well, we're going to have some corporate HR policy and, we're going to provide 4 PTO hours per quarter. Forget all that. Get your people, get out, get outside the doors and go find a place to help somebody. You'll get that back 100 times. But, the other thing for the zoo, obviously as a conservation-based organization, we know that conservation starts in our backyard. It's not starting by, a conservation project over in East Africa, which we do all those things. And that's in situ conservation is important. But a lot of reasons our wildlife is suffering is because of our waste of natural resources. So this is where we need to really focus on. But then there's also this part of, the energy poverty we've talked about several different times, different ways. That's a real thing. And when neighborhoods suffer, the zoo suffers. When neighborhoods suffer, corporate America suffer, right? Right? So we want these neighborhoods to be uplifted because that's good for us, it's good for the community, it's good for everybody. And that includes the people side of things where Reverend Lynch mentioned the childhood poverty. Childhood asthma in Cincinnati is the worst per capita in the United States of America.
That's crazy.
There's a lot of reasons for that. One, we're in Ohio Valley, we're in a bowl, we're in 275 loop. It's because we burn coal to the west and get sucked in and it sits here. So we have, let me say it again, the highest incidence per cap of childhood asthma in the United States of America. How people don't have a massive problem with that is beyond me. How we solve that problem, there's a lot of ways. Solar panels like that is a piece of the puzzle. And educating people, LED lights, all these simple things people can do. So one, they can afford to stay in their place, but also to clean up the air. And if childhood health isn't a part of something that kind of registers in your heart, well then I got nothing for you.
Yeah. So final question in this segment. What part of the project gratifies you the most? I'll start with Mark on this one because you come from a different perspective, two sides, the zoo and SonLight Power as a board member.
Sure. To me, it's like the perfect example of like-minded institutions, like-minded people, and networking. And that's what happens when you're involved with projects like this all over the place and you get to spend time with a Steve Melink or Pastor Lynch or Charlie Frank and all these people, you start seeing how all these things are interconnected from community to community. And being able to just play a small little piece in that and just connecting some dots has been a lot of fun. And again, to Reverend Lynch's point, people see this, okay, now how do I get that? All right, well, you got to start connecting more dots. But this project has been a great example of the networking of good people that have good hearts and want to make a big impact.
Well, I would just, probably just add to my previous comment that, anything that we can do as a company to help bring clean energy to the world, I'm all about it. And I've never been to New Prospect Baptist Church. I've never met Pastor Lynch. It's been an awesome experience coming here and being part of this panel and seeing the impact of this project. But ultimately, I think Mark's answer is right on. Just to see the disparate elements, people that came together to make this happen. I mean, just imagine if that can be, multiplied in some way as a model, as you were kind of suggesting, Kevin.
I think, interesting enough, and it was shown on the video, the part that really made me smile was our kitchen crew who would come and cook breakfast for you guys.
It was good.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, grits and bacon and sausage and biscuits. And they do it out of love.
Yeah.
We have this huge kitchen right behind us. They love doing that. And so I think they'll get up at 7 o'clock in the morning or 6 in the morning to make sure that people are fed. So it's just a whole team effort. And when I introduce myself, I always say I'm the proud pastor of New Prospect Baptist Church. And they are the reasons that I'm proud, that our members love to do the work.
So we're going to transition our conversation now to the bigger picture. Where do we go from here? What lessons have we learned? And how can we use this project, this donation, to benefit the greater community, both here in Cincinnati and beyond? Now, the project shouldn't be overstated for what it is relative to the enormity of some of the issues we're facing right now. But I think it does offer some tangible hope that we can come together as a Cincinnati community and beyond on common themes like sustainability, clean energy. Worth noting, we're recording this panel prior to Majora Carter's keynote speech on August the 5th. So we really don't know or can't really extrapolate some of her key points from that. But we are going to use her TED Talk entitled Greening the Ghetto for some of the themes we'll be talking about in these next questions. So Pastor Lynch, I'll start with you. Borrowing a theme from Majora Carter's TED Talk, how do you envision this project could serve as a model for underserved urban communities in Cincinnati and those striving for environmental and economic justice?
Okay. I don't know when people will be watching this, but at the time we're recording this, we're in a pandemic. We're also in the midst of protests around the country and the world, and grappling with race relations once again in America. We're still having that conversation. So I've dreamed, again, for this solar array, not just for our church, but looking for an economic sector for the African American community to have buy-in to. The Indian American community, the Patels and the Singhs own 62% of motels now in this country. They've cut a niche out. The Korean American community controls the black hair care market. The Cambodian and Vietnamese community controls manicures and pedicures. And that happened in 1970. It's a beautiful story. It's a documentary called Nailed It. There's also a documentary on the Patel Motel Cartel. The Arab American community controls gas stations and corner stores. I mean, these huge, and they're called non-linear economic sectors, which means that it's nothing related to their ethnicity. It's just they found an economic sector to control. The Ethiopian community in America controls parking. If you park almost anywhere in downtown Cincinnati, it'll be a person of Ethiopian descent who will take your money. And that started in Washington, D.C. by a man named Enoch Tesfaye. The African American community has been here 400 years, and you're hard pressed to find one economic sector that we control. Heretofore, it's maybe been the church, and I mean, they're suffering. And so I just looked at community economic or community energy plans. And there are a number of them around the world. Canada does it quite well, where the community controls its energy and it provides jobs. So it's an economic generator. It helps alleviate the poverty. And I think we're right to do that here in Cincinnati. I mean, you know, you have Melink and SonLight. I mean, you guys are like stars in this. And then you add Mark and the zoo. I thought you guys have like one of the largest solar arrays in the country?
In the region.
In the region?
At the time, it was one of the top in the country.
Right, right. So my thought is, how do we now move that and this energy to dealing with some of the racial tensions and issues we have in this country? And a lot of it stems with economics. So that's what I would love to see happen and be willing to be a part of. And I think I have another good 20 years in me.
At least.
Hopefully, yeah. To do something great. I think this is a time for transformation.
In that same TED Talk, Majora Carter also references a concept called the triple bottom line, where multiple parties, in her terms, the developer, community, and government, find ways to work together in mutually beneficial ways to make real sustainable impact possible. So, this is to everyone here, how can this project and New Prospect serve as the model or prototype for greater Cincinnati businesses, nonprofits, and community organizations to come together in those mutually beneficial ways to equip our urban communities with sustainable resources needed to thrive?
Well, you know, one thing I wonder is in this COVID era in which we live now, is there's a lot of underutilized assets out there. Buildings, cars, equipment, probably computers to some extent. But as corporations are learning that they don't necessarily need that office space, and therefore you don't need that car to get to that office space, is there an opportunity to somehow reconcile these underutilized assets and repurpose them in a way similar to how the solar PV system was? Is there measurement methods by which corporations can see this? You know, if an asset has less than 50% of its intended value when we first invested in this asset maybe 5 or 10 years ago, can we do more good? Can we get more good by repurposing it for a better cause? And maybe that's in your brand, or, you know, I often call them your HR and PR benefits. Mark mentioned how it can improve the morale and the productivity of your workforce, and I've seen that myself at our company. I think that's a new way of thinking about the billions of dollars on corporate balance sheets. You know, how well utilized are all these assets out there? How can they be better utilized?
I think something, and this is really geared towards the corporate side of things, but something I find people sometimes struggle to connect the dots on are environmental justice and social justice are constantly intertwined all the time, right? Whether it be energy poverty, whether it be, for example, in our county, combined sewer overflows into people's basements, lack of access to fresh food. I just go down a list. Mm-hmm. All those issues are environmental issues too. And most corporations have environmental goals or standards or aspirations, and they also have social goals and aspirations, and you can do them both at the same time. And what I see a lot, especially recently, is huge corporations, Cincinnati-based and outside, saying, we're going carbon neutral. We're going to go net zero, and 99% of what that mechanism is buying offsets through a third-party broker to purchase wind or hydro credits in the middle of wherever. I'm not saying that's bad, but it's not helping here, right? And why don't we take some of that money and, for example, fund projects like this, right? That is very measurable. It's got a kilowatt hour. So if you're looking to reduce your carbon footprint, there's a very specific kilowatt hour reduction, and you're helping your underserved neighbors. Not some wind farm in Kansas. you're helping your neighbors in Avondale and West End and Roselawn. A good example is the Light Up Avondale project. We've been putting in LED lights all throughout our neighbors and nonprofits in Avondale, which is going to save the neighborhood of Avondale $1 million over the next 5 years. $1 million. So maybe we should be pulling money as a community into projects like that, like the array here at the church, like Light Up Avondale, like across the community, because it's measurable. And if you're a corporate entity, you're checking 2 boxes at the same time. So it's efficient, you can point to it, and and get your staff engaged. Like, to me, it just makes so much sense. But it's a little bit of work. It's going to put people outside their comfort zones, which is not where people like to be. But how do we use this pandemic and what's going on with the protests as an opportunity to say, you know what? These are really complicated issues that are, I don't know the answer, but these things that we're talking about are very measurable and solvable. So let's use the COVID, the protests, the unrest, and quite frankly, the corporate cash being thrown out there in the billions of dollars into some sea of money that is supporting advanced energy in Texas, which again is not bad. I'm saying that money could be better spent here in our communities.
And I think the word we've used a number of times today, sustainable. To me, that would be my message to corporate America and also philanthropic America. This is sustainable. And I'm not against feeding people and passing out meals. That's not really sustainable. And it doesn't build community. So again, for 23 years, I pastored in Over the Rhine. And during those 23 years, we were the most serviced community in the state of Ohio. We had every social service agency known to humankind in one neighborhood. And in those same 23 years, we were considered the worst neighborhood in Ohio. And so obviously the idea of servicing people, surrounding people with services, making them whole, didn't work. Because we had, Tender Mercies, City Gospel Mission, Free Store Food Bank, drop-ins, they were all in one community. And when people who wanted to do good work, they would drive in Over the Rhine and do their good works. And yet we were still at the bottom of the barrel. And I'm not against social services. It provides a necessary safety net. And now that Over the Rhine, this community in Cincinnati, for those who may not live here, is like this hot, hip place, guess who's no longer there? Service providers. Drop-in center, you're in Queensgate, City Gospel Mission, you're on Bank Street. It's like everybody out of the water. So my message to corporate America and to others is during this time of pandemic is let's not make the same mistakes. Let's not say, oh, well, Damon, here's $25,000, go feed 15 people. No, I'd rather provide solar arrays. I'd rather provide training on something that's sustainable so they can better their lives. And I just hope that we learn that this be a model, that we can do things that are of goodwill, that have a longer shelf life than a plate of food.
Yeah. I'm reminded of a conference I attended a few years ago, pre-pandemic. It's called Solar Power International. Mm-hmm. Largest gathering of solar professionals and installers in the world, thousands of attendees. And the opening speech, the keynote speech, was not about the newest technologies, energy storage, or how solar cells are becoming more efficient. It was about how can the solar industry, how can clean energy tell a different story that will resonate with people beyond the niche that know about green energy or clean energy. And that's where I think there's an opportunity for all parties involved, for corporate America, green businesses, to leverage the great stories coming from this type of collaboration so they can connect in human ways, not just with the head, but with the heart, to their marketplace, and maybe gaining a bit more market share in the process. Everybody wins. So I'm going to segue over to Mark here, because part of your mantra is challenging the status quo. I'm curious, I love your insights about how to overcome obstacles. What main obstacle do you see? What headwind do you see as the primary one keeping us from advancing?
To me, the most powerful force on earth is inertia. And getting people to get off of their traditions and what they're used to and out of their comfort zone. This is human nature, right? It's just really hard. And people, even if they know it'll make their lives better, resist that change sometimes. And it's frustrating, right? But that's just kind of the world we're in. But I think kind of comparing, tying into this project, breaking out of those, like, hey, for example, my role, say at the Cincinnati Zoo, is like, well, we're a zoo. We're not, stay within your fence and do your thing, just like every other zoo in the, I go to these conferences, zoo conferences, and I'll do a presentation about some of these things, and most of the people are looking at me like, either why are you doing that? Like, that's not the role of a zoo, or how'd you talk to your boss and letting you do that? But that's that status quo. Like, here's your lane, stay in it. Well, that ain't working, right? Clearly, that is not working. So if the little old frickin' Cincinnati Zoo in Avondale can break outside of its kind of shell and its status quo and do projects like this around the city and have an impact, imagine if everybody had that same mentality of, you know what, I'm not used to that. That makes me uncomfortable, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I know it's right. And hopefully this is the type of project that inspires people to say, all right, if they can do it over there in Roseville, I'm gonna do it too. So to me, that's, again, the visualization of this and the symbolic nature of this hopefully gets people to say, this is unusual, this is different, I've never seen this before, but now that I have, maybe that unease is a little bit less now for them to say, all right, let's go do it.
So looking forward, questions for everyone here. What excites you the most on the horizon?
I think what excites me is just being part of this panel and knowing that I know you guys, and that we can share each other's visions. I believe that the resources are out there to do more of this, even on a larger scale. So I'm excited. I think we're in a time, prayerfully in our country, of transformation, and people want to see each other do better and learn how to live together and put some of this stuff behind us. So if it takes the sun to do that, then let's do it. Yeah.
To me, what's exciting, and Steve knows this better than I, we're coming to this point where the price of solar it's almost there. Sort of, large scale solar makes sense all over the country. Pencils out, no big deal. You get into smaller systems, residential, it's still tough in a market like Cincinnati. California, New Jersey, no big deal, but we're almost there. I think we're within 18, 24, 36 months of solar pricing just being there where it's one less barrier, especially for a nonprofit or folks that are challenged, financially or otherwise. And so that's coming. And then you also have this issue with all the unrest that's happening and all the strife. And a lot of people saying, well, what can I do? I don't know what to do here. What can I do? So people are looking for meaningful ways of chipping in. So, and that's all happening together. And that's why I see with those coming together and some examples like this, I think the time is ripe right now to get people excited about concepts like this. I think time's better now than it ever has been.
For me, I think it's an opportunity to think new with this COVID crisis. So many of us have to reset our buttons on how to go forward, and philanthropy might be one of those buttons we need to reset. Is philanthropy about contributing a certain portion of your income to the United Way, a good cause, but do you get to see the benefit of the dollars that you're giving? And maybe this panel is a view to how philanthropy can be made more personal and more impactful, bringing people together within the same community. And I'm not wanting to suggest that we reduce putting money into one pot and put it into the other, but I think possibly it might be a way of resetting that button and thinking about how we can make a bigger local impact. And I'm appreciative, Kevin, of what you've done. You've really made this a bigger story than it otherwise would have been if it was just the three of us involved. Part of leading change it's not only through education, but it's through inspiration. And I'm hopeful that those viewing this presentation will walk away somewhat inspired and think about resetting that button about how they go forward in giving back to the community.
So before we close, in lieu of not having a normal Q&A period from our audience, would you like to share or ask any questions of each other?
I would just like to tag on to what Pastor Lynch said about sustainable giving, to make sure it's totally understood the point that he was making, that, you know, in resetting this button, philanthropy does not have to be about seeing money used one time, but seeing this investment giving back over and over and over again. So the solar PV, for example, it's not just a one-time return on investment. Every single day it's producing electricity and saving energy for this church. Let's say it's saving $1,000 a month, saving $1,000 this month, next month. Those savings can go back towards better things than paying an energy bill, and that are more, focused on the mission at hand.
No,
I got a question for you.
all right.
So,
Is it a hard one?
chickens, solar panels, got your solar panels, got your little garden. Your whole thing is always about teach someone how to fish, don't give them a fish. Well,
Right.
give them a fish and teach them how to fish.
Right.
What now? For this campus, your dreams, your vision, we talk about resiliency and sustainability and making a new prospect as lean and tight so you can invest in everything. What's that look like for you?
Actually, the what now is not on this site. We're in conversation right now with 8451 and some others about a small grocery store concept in the communities. So we just looked at a site in Bond Hill. It used to be an IGA. It's like right on there's like no parking because it was a community grocery store. So we're in conversations with them now because, Avondale still doesn't have a grocery store and nobody wants to come. And I'm not of the mindset that you keep waiting and asking, you just do it.
Right.
And again, this used to be the Jewish Community Center, and I grew up in North Avondale, which was a Black Jewish community. So one day I had a meeting here with some Jewish leaders, and they asked me a question, and they were trying to make a point and said, Damon, do you know why we built Jewish Hospital? And I didn't. I mean, it was on Burnett Avenue, and I grew up around there. I said, well, we built Jewish Hospital because there was a time when Jewish doctors were not given privileges to practice in other hospitals. So we built our own. And what he was just really telling me is, quit waiting on somebody to come do it, somebody to put a grocery store in Avondale or Bond Hill. Just go do it. And again, it's not just that simple, but it's doable. And everything we've done here on this 22-acre site says it's doable. So right now we're working on the grocery store concept. Kroger, if it happens, will be a part of it. It'll be their product on the shelf, but also some of our product from the garden. I am still working on solar energy for the community. So those are the two big things on my plate right now. So I look forward, Steve, to reading your book. I'm always a good reader, and probably make me a better pastor.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
and Kevin, we thank you. You're awesome.
Thank you.
You're awesome. Again, we are looking forward to the mission trip.
We are too.
Okay.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Whether it's here in the U.S. or
Yeah.
overseas, whenever that restriction is lifted.
Yeah.
I wish we had more time. This has been a great conversation. I'll just close on a personal note. I've been blessed with opportunities to live in other parts of the world, London, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., New York. There's something special about Cincinnati. We have our flaws, to be sure. But this is a place we set our roots in. I think all four of us grew up here and are still here. I think there's a reason for that. There's this feeling that collaboration, cooperation, it's still part of our DNA. We want to raise our kids that way. So whatever changes that we make are going to impact not just my kids and grandkids, but my kids and grandkids are probably going to interact with yours too. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty cool. So I think we've answered the question, can clean energy be that common thread in our communities and in Cincinnati? I think it can bring us together, even when there's so many forces out there dividing us. So thank you for your time. Before we close, I want to make sure to thank a few members here. The Green Umbrella, thank you for making this possible. Rebel Pilgrim, all the video here, appreciate all you do. For your storytelling needs, check out Rebel Pilgrim. Iron Wing for audio. New Prospect Baptist Church, couldn't be better host. Thank you, Pastor Lynch and your team. Of course, our panelists, Pastor Lynch, Steve Melink, Mark Fisher, everyone else who contributed to the repurposing of the solar power system here on New Prospect's campus, the employee owners of Melink Corporation, the wonderful warm congregation here at New Prospect, and the hardworking team at the zoo, B&J Electric, Creek Busters, the Reds Community Fund, Sustainagy Cooperative, RBI Solar, just to name a few. And thanks to my lovely wife, Jenny, for putting up with me. So thanks to you for watching. And as we like to say at SonLight Power, get out there and let your light shine. Thanks.